Siyanda, what opportunities exist for private sector investment in infrastructure and water projects within the mining industry?
Thanks, Gwenza. So, there's a few themes. One of the large ones is obviously water treatment, right? The mining entities have got large obligations to treat water that comes out of their operations. And there exists an opportunity for private sector players, technology providers to partner with mining entities to actually do the treatment of this water at scale, where they actually extract efficiencies, but all at a cost that's reasonable to the operations. But also we've seen lately the bulk infrastructure become thematic as well. So pipelines extracting water, just because a lot of the infrastructure hasn't been maintained for many, many years. And we're seeing the mining sector also come into play a significant role in the investment that's required to upgrade those pipelines, to expand capacity, etc. And so there's always an interplay with a government entity on the other side. And the regulations around water infrastructure in general are a little bit tricky and complex. And so there's a lot of work that is being done in the background to try and create the structures that will enable private sector investment to flow into the water sector. And I think the mining houses, a lot of them are at the forefront of some of that work.
So how can RMB facilitate partnerships between private investors and mining companies to improve infrastructure and water management?
Yeah. So, RMB plays a pivotal role, right? We work across private sector players and public sector players to channel capital to where it's needed. A lot of private investors have got dedicated funds for blue assets. And so it's about marrying the requirement for the funding and the dedicated funds that exist out there, not only from mining entities. As I mentioned earlier, there's also an interplay with government, and there's also quite a lot of work that's being done to try and procure water solutions and water infrastructure on a programmatic basis so that you can flood in capital at scale. And there, RMB plays a pivotal role in creating partnerships where the private sector, whether it's mining entities or third-party investors that are looking for projects within the water space, can actually partner to respond to government programs in a way where projects are well structured and where they are fully funded using, private capital to actually create the scale that's required in terms of the investment in the water sector.
What are the risks and rewards associated with private participation in mining-related water projects and infrastructure?
One of the things around mining is obviously there's an interplay between the returns that need to be earned by private sector players who invest in infrastructure, but also the cost to the end user, right? And one of the things that we've seen work successfully in past decades was the use of PPP projects where they are industrial users of whatever nature on the other side, right? That creates a blend in terms of the user base and the credit view that banks like ourselves can look at on the offtake side, right? Making the projects a lot more economically viable. So the mining sector has got a big role to play there in balancing out the needs that they have in terms of the communities that they operate within, but also creating the foundation for the credit view that lenders need to take to bank projects that are also then supplying water to other end users. So that's a delicate balance that needs to be done, but we have seen it work previously on PPP projects in the past. And so I think what the themes going forward is how do we replicate what has been done in previous projects that were done maybe decades ago, taking into account the new constraints, right? Being the lack of government guarantees for municipal borrowings, and the large need where mining entities can also play a role as water services providers, etc., in actually creating scale and bulking up the requirements.
What are the key risks and rewards associated with private participation within mining-related infrastructure and mining projects?
Thanks, Gwenza. I think one of the things that's a careful consideration is obviously the regulations around procuring water infrastructure. So an important consideration is also the returns that private investors need to earn when investing in infrastructure, balanced obviously carefully with the cost to the end user, given the nature of water, right? There is decades ago good examples of PPPs that have been done with municipalities trying to procure the infrastructure, but with good corporate industrial offtakes on the other side. That makes the argument that we consider as funders a lot easier to consider when you consider the credit risk of, let's say, a large mining corporate on the other side that then augments the use of water with municipalities that are surrounding, right? And those things are the interplays that need to be considered when procuring these projects. But bringing forward, decades later, it's about looking at what has been done in the past in terms of those old PPPs and taking the learnings and the good structuring that came from those, but taking into consideration some of the constraints that exist now, like the lack of government guarantees for municipal procured projects, and how then we structure these projects such that they're still bankable in the context of those current constraints.